On this week's episode of the Best of Johnston County podcast, we're doing a special edition episode that we like to call Ask Jonathan Breeden Anything. And on today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about step-parent adoptions and adoptions in general. So if you've ever wondered who can adopt, how you adopt, how long it takes, what paperwork might be necessary to adopt, and what are the legal ramifications if you're successful in adopting a child, listen in.
Welcome to another episode of Best of Johnston County, brought to you by Breeden Law Office. Our host, Jonathan Breeden, an experienced family lawyer with a deep connection to the community, is ready to take you on a journey through the area that he has called home for over 20 years. Whether it's a deep dive into the love locals have for the county or unraveling the complexities of family law, Best of Johnston County presents an authentic slice of this unique community.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Best of Johnston County podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden. And on today's episode, we're having a special edition episode that we like to call Ask Jonathan Breeden Anything. And in these episodes, our social media coordinator, Raina Birch, asks me, Jonathan Breeden, questions about varying family law topics that we deal with at the Breeden Law Office every single day and have now for over 25 years. Today's episode is going to be about adoptions, different types of adoptions, and some of the basic procedures that go in to each of the different adoptions that there are. But before we get into that, I'd like to ask you to like, follow, and subscribe to this podcast wherever you see it, whether it be on Apple, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, or any of the other social media channels of the Best Johnston County podcast. The Best Johnston County podcast comes out every single Monday and has now for well over 2 years. We're well over 100 episodes now, and we continue to keep bringing you this great content. As on most episodes, I, Jonathan Breeden, interview interesting community leaders, small business owners, nonprofits, and just people I find interesting in and around Johnston County. And every once in a while, we do these special edition episodes where I answer family law questions. Golly, I am tired. I've come back from a weekend.
Listen, he's getting ready to go on vacation.
I know.
His
I came
mind
back
is elsewhere.
Right. I know. I came back from a weekend of travel sports for anybody that's into that. And
you do love
right.
sports.
No, I do love sports. So anyway. So, all right. So we're talking about adoptions.
We are going to talk about adoptions because I know a lot of the episodes and a lot of what we work with here is not always happy all the time, right? It's contentious. It's a hard time that people are going through. But adoptions is kind of one of the bright lights that we do get to deal with here.
It is probably the happiest thing.
Yes.
That, and sometimes guardianships too.
Yes.
When you know you've gotten somebody protection who can't protect themselves.
Exactly. Yes.
But the rest of the time, it's often, there are no winners.
Yep.
Oftentimes in family law, unfortunately.
Yep, exactly. And I would like to point out that adoptions, I mean, we usually deal with obviously adoptions for children, but you can adopt an adult too.
Right. We've done some adult adoptions.
You can do that, which I think is always, usually when that happens, it's always a really happy thing.
Right. Well, right. Most adoptions are happy.
Most of the time,
yeah.
Okay, so the first question is, what is the difference between step-parent adoption, relative adoption, and agency adoption?
Okay, well, an agency adoption is when an adoption agency sort of arranges and does everything. The adoption agency will often get the parents' consent. They will work on getting the rights terminated. They will get an attorney. They will sort of line everything up, and hopefully it goes smoothly. And they'll help get the home study. They'll most of the time the agencies like to work with consenting parents.
Yes.
Where you have two parents consenting, or you have one parent consenting and the father may be unknown, or something like that. A step-parent adoption is probably the most common type of adoption that we do here at the Breeden Law Office, and that is where somebody who is married to the child's parent, whether it be the child's father or mother, and they've been married at least 6 months. I mean, how many times oh my goodness, like how many times do we do consults where they come in and say, well, I want my boyfriend to adopt my child. And I'm like, you're going to have to get married, and you have to be married for at least 6 months and to be able to do it. But so if you're married to one of the child's parents and you have been married at least 6 months and you have acted as a parent and you have a parent-child like relationship with the child, and if the child is over the age of 12, they have to consent to the adoption.
I didn't know that.
That's interesting,
That
right?
is, yeah.
Then you can apply, and the client is actually the parent seeking to adopt. So oftentimes, mom and stepdad will come in here together, but we're actually only representing the stepfather, right, who's doing the adoption. And he's what you would consider to be, in that scenario, the petitioner. He is going to petition the court to adopt the child. Now, adoptions are done before the clerk of court, not in front of a district court judge, unless they get complicated and serious legal issues come up and that kind of stuff. Then the elected clerk of court can transfer the case to district court for some hearings, evidentiary type hearings that they won't conduct it there. But I've only had one adoption in my career two end up in district court. So
it's rare.
It's rare. So it's mainly before the clerk of court. And in Wake County, you're dealing with assistant clerks of court, not the elected clerk of court. Right now, I guess the clerk of court in Wake County is appointed, but she'll be running for election. The clerk that was there resigned and became a district court judge. So that's who's ultimately in charge of this. And
then there's relative adoption.
And then there's relative adoptions, right? Okay, which is similar to a step-parent adoption, except it's a relative, or it could be anybody. I mean, at that point, right? It could be a neighbor. I mean, we've represented. I did one a few years ago where the woman's employer adopted the child.
Oh, wow.
A lady owned a tanning bed place. One of the people who worked at the tanning bed place, was not in a position to take care of the child. And so her employer adopted the child.
Oh.
So really, or really anybody else for that matter, which is the way most agency adoptions are, just the agency not doing it. So, right. So anyway, but the main thing is to be able to adopt the child, you need to have a parent-child like relationship with the child, or the agencies are a little different, but
and that also agencies.
No, I mean, of course, right. I mean, you talk about some of the agency adoptions, you don't, because those are often infants and stuff like that.
Yeah, and agency can also mean foster care.
That's true.
It doesn't have to be a private business. It can also be like foster care acts as an agency for adoptions.
Well, that's the county and the state, right?
It comes to that.
Correct. And that gets real complicated.
Yeah.
Right. So we won't get into all that. But so the ones we deal with primarily are step-parent adoptions or relative adoptions, grandma, grandpa, that kind of stuff. Aunts, uncles.
Yeah.
People that have, that care about this child and want what's best for the child. I mean, we did one a few years ago where the parents passed away and we did an adoption for the dad's girlfriend. And so she had been living with the child, taking care of the child when dad passed away. And so we did that for her. And that was really good for that little girl.
I mean, for that child, they didn't have to move schools or change.
Correct.
Make new friends.
That's right.
Sounds like best case scenario.
No, it really was.
In a tragedy.
Right. In a tragic situation.
Yeah.
Correct. And we've done grandparents, stuff like that.
Yep. All right. Next question. What are the legal requirements in North Carolina for terminating a biological parent's rights before an adoption can be finalized if the biological parent doesn't consent?
Yeah. I mean, there's probably 20 or 25 things in the statute.
Yeah. Is there a checklist somewhere?
Right. Well, if you want to look it up, the statute is in CGS 7B-1111. But the ones that are the most common are abandonment, or they never actually, which means they've either never met the child, they've had no contact with the child doesn't know who they are. You know what I mean? You also have where people have never legitimated the child, marrying the mother or getting their name on the birth certificate or any of that. Another one is if you are under a child support order and you don't provide any support.
I was going to say, that's a big one. It's not the only thing you need though, right? But it does add to it.
Right, but that's in the statute as well. Child abuse, if the child's been abused by that other parent, that, and it realizes to a certain level, that can be grounds as well. But the most common one, the one that we see 98% of the time when we're doing a step-parent adoption or we're doing an adoption for a family member, is abandonment. And it's where the parent either maybe didn't know they were a parent or just is not involved, has never been involved, we often don't know where this person is, and we have to try to hire private eyes to try to find them and that kind of stuff. So that's the biggest one. Sometimes you get them on the failing to pay support, providing support for the child, stuff like that. But yeah, so those are some of the reasons. There's committed murder. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them.
They're in jail for an extended period of time. They can't be a parent.
Right. They're going to be in jail for 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
We did one of those not long ago.
Yep.
But yeah, so by the time they got out, the child was going to be 30.
Yep.
Or something like that. I mean, right. So that kind of stuff.
And I think if I remember correctly, if the biological parent who owes support signs away their rights and say, yeah, you can adopt the child, do they still owe that back pay? Or
they do. They actually, but you can negotiate that
and say you don't
if you agree. Right. And But in a lot of situations, if we don't have abandonment, which is the most common, the second most common is the other parent just consents.
Yeah.
They understand they're not involved. They don't want to pay child support. The child support agency is chasing them to every job they've got.
Or their wages are getting garnished.
Their wages are getting garnished if the agency can find it.
Yep.
They're getting served with show causes where they're facing jail for not paying child support. And we can give them an out and say, hey, look, you'll just consent. You don't have an ongoing child support obligation. Yeah. And so that sometimes works for us as well.
Yes. All right. So number 3, for families considering step-parent adoption, what documentation or evidence does the court look for to show that the parent has a meaningful, established relationship with the child?
I mean, they want to look at how long they've lived together. They want to look at the role that step-parent has played in the child's life. Is the step-parent involved in the child's schooling? And if it's aware of the child's medical conditions, if there are any, is the step-parent involved in the child's religious upbringing, stuff like that? How does the child interact with the parent? Does the child see the step parent sort of as a parent and respect that role for the parent? And most of that comes out of the home study that the court is going to require in almost every single. I mean, there's a statute that says if you live together for 2 years, the court could waive the home study. They're not waiving home studies. Not anymore. No. Not after we had that situation in Johnston County a few years ago where the kids got adopted and then one of them ended up dying. They're not doing that now.
They're not taking any chances anymore.
Right. There's going to be a home study. And so part of what I'm talking about is going to be in the home study, because the home study is going to be a comprehensive review of the house, of the arrangements, who lives there, the relationship of the parties. In most all step-parent adoptions, there is already a biological child between the step-parent and the parent. And so this child's just going to become fully whole like the other child that's already there. Yeah. Now, it's not every case, but in most of them, the parent and the step-parent have a child together. This child is there. This child's father is MIA. Nobody knows where they're at. They're not paying support. They're not around. They're not acting as a father. They have no desire to be one, basically. Yeah. So that's kind of what you're going to see. And a good home study is going to cover all of that. They're going to look at, where the child sleeps, that kind of stuff. So
if you're financially providing for them, photos, videos,
Correct. Almost like you're having a custody hearing.
Exactly.
And, and the home study is going to be done by a social worker most of the time, an LCSW, and they know what they're looking for. They know what the court's looking for. They know how to write these things. And so it ends up working out fairly well. And so if you've done those things, you've been the parent basically, and usually it's for years and years and years. I know 6 months is the requirement, but I'm talking about most of the cases.
6 months is a little.
Right. Most of the cases we've done, I don't know how long they've been. They've been married at least 6 months, but they've been together 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. Yeah. They got together when the child was 3 or 4. The child's now 12. They've been in this for a long time. Because here's the thing. I know this is one of the questions you're going to get to in a minute, but once that adoption is through, that child is that step-parent's child. Yep. They're no longer the step-parent. They are the father. They are the mother. And we've done some for moms too. Now, a lot of them are from him, but we've done our share of step-parent adoptions for stepmoms, just like we've done a lot more stepdads, but we've done 2 or 3 stepmoms as well, that have stepped in to help raise these kids. And so, but that kid's going to become that parent's child. And we actually did one a few years ago where we did the adoption and then the relationship didn't work out and the step parent, now new dad, actually got full custody of that child, and probably should have, looking at the facts. But so, I mean, but right, but which also means, and one of the things and I've had this discussion with many men sitting in my office, and I've watched them gulp because the wife is sitting right there. You owe child support.
Yep.
If it doesn't work out, that child is yours. That child inherits from you unless you have a will that says otherwise under the intestate laws. They are your child. There's a new birth certificate issued, and your name is on it. And so,
child doesn't have to change their name.
Correct.
If they don't want to. Right.
Right.
Like,
well, the parents decide.
Parents decide.
The parents decide.
But like you said, the 12-year-old, if they're over 12, they have to consent to the adoption.
Right.
I would assume that also includes.
Right. But most of the time, the kids want to change their name.
Yeah.
They want it because they want to have the same name as everybody else.
Yeah.
It's part of being part of the
family, like fully part of the
family. Correct.
I get that.
So that, they're looking at everything. They're just trying to make sure that this is what is truly best for the child.
Yes.
Right. Not what the parents agree. Right. The court's job in this situation, the clerk of court, its job is to make sure this is best for this child moving forward.
Yes.
Have family law questions? Need guidance to navigate legal challenges? The compassionate team at Breeden Law Office is here to help. Visit us at www.breedenfirm.com for practical advice, resources, or to book a consultation. Remember, when life gets messy, you don't have to face it alone.
All right. So here's a good question. From filing to like the final decree, how long would you say the process takes?
In Johnston and Harnett counties, can be done in 3 to 6 to 8 months. In Wake County, it's running 18 months to 2.5 to 3 years.
Wow.
The statute.
They're real short on court rooms.
No, the clerk's office is short staffed.
Yes.
Well, they are
understaffed,
or they are choosing to put staff where they are putting staff.
Yeah.
So I'm not the clerk of court in Wake County, but no, Wake County, it can take forever. We've had them take 3 years in Wake County. I think 18 months is probably a minimum up there. I know the statute says you're supposed to do it in 6 months. That's not happening in Wake County. It hasn't in the entire time I've been trying to do adoptions in Wake County. Johnston or Harnett County will move them as fast as you can get them the information. And I think that's great. And I know that both Michelle Ball and Renee Whittington, the clerks in those two counties, prioritize getting the adoptions done as quick as possible. So, and if you get a consent from the other parent, it goes a lot quicker.
Yep.
A lot quicker. So, but some of the other stuff you have to have, that you don't think about is you have to have certified copies of all the divorce decrees. So the step parent, if they've been married before, you got to have copies of those divorce decrees. If the mom has been married before, the dad's been married before, if the actual parent, you got to have their divorce decrees. Yeah. You have to have the birth certificate of the parent, social security number of the adopting parent. You have to have, it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of documentation that I guess you are who you say you are, kind of thing. And that you are basically, you have to prove that you are legally married to your spouse, which means all the other divorces have to be done correctly and timely.
Yep.
And we've seen where that may not have been the case, which in North Carolina, that's a whole nother podcast. If you're not actually divorced or, in a timely manner, the next marriage is void.
Yeah. It's not legal.
It's not legal. And so, I've run into that a couple of times. So, not intentionally, it just happened.
No, I had a friend that stayed separated for like 10 years. Like the divorce, they just never finalized it, and they were separated for I think right around 10 years.
Yeah. So it could, like I said, but you got to be able to prove all those types of things. Basically, so you can show that this marriage, certified copy of this marriage certificate between the biological parent and the adopting step parent is there as well. If you're talking about the other kind of adoptions where you got grandparents or aunts or uncles or whatever, if both parents consent, that's great. If you can't locate a parent to consent, you could still move forward with an adoption. You have to make Herculean efforts to try to find them. If you cannot find them, you can file an affidavit with the clerk of everything you did to try to find them. We usually try to hire private eyes. Yeah. We do skip tracing. We try to find these people. If we are unable to, then you can publish an ad in the newspaper to notify these people.
Yep.
And then you can get, if they still don't respond, you can get the clerk to waive their consent and find that the consent of this parent who has not been located, but has been served by publication is not necessary. So you don't absolutely have to know where the child is, where the other parent is, to get an adoption.
Yes. All right. And then last question, and you kind of already touched on this, but like after the adoption finalized, what legal changes occur for the child and the adoptive parent?
Well, the first thing is you get a new birth certificate.
Yes.
And the adoptive parent's name is listed as the father on the birth certificate. And the child, like we said earlier, becomes completely legally the adopting parent. And there is no difference in the law's mind between the adopting parent and the biological parent. They will be treated the same. If they break up, they will owe child support to each other. Custody, like I said, we had the one case where the adopting parent ended up getting full custody of the child. So, all of those types of things. But yeah, it's basically
they become legal heirs.
Legal heir, right? You got heirs where the child will inherit from that parent, particularly if the parent doesn't have a will through intestate laws. I mean, we did a will not too long ago, Raina, where a guy said he adopted his then wife's son 30 years ago. Hadn't seen or heard from either one of them in 25 years.
Oh.
But that's still his child. So in the will, we had to say, son John Doe is not to collect anything under this will, so that they didn't get anything at all, because they were still, the child still, I mean, it's an adult now, but but still technically, this man's son, even though he hadn't seen the mom or the kid in 25 years.
Yeah, because once an adoption is final, there's no take backsies. Like,
well, I mean, people try to, right? I mean, that's another debate for another day. I mean, people do. I mean, they do surrender them back to the county, and it's a horrible situation. Oh. We won't go into that, but yeah. So no, but it is your child, and that's the biggest thing.
Yep.
And and they owe the child support. And why I said the gulp was sometimes they're sitting here and they kind of want to do it, but they're thinking, I don't know if this relationship's going to work, and I'm not going to owe child support. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for this kid who's not technically mine, but I'm taking care of right now.
Right.
But
that's
for the rest of until
that's
they're 18. Oh.
Right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
When they're little and they're 2 and you're talking 16 years, that's
right.
You better know.
Well, right. Or care enough about the child that you want to be the parent. Exactly. That's the thing here, Raina. This is like, you care enough about the child, you want to be the parent, regardless of the relationship, regardless of whether it works out with the other parent or not. You want that child to be yours, and you want to be responsible, and you want to parent that child. Then that's what you got to be thinking. And I think you have to be thinking of it separate from the relationship with that parent. Like, this is going to be my child. Look, relationships come, relationships go. Over half of marriages end in divorce. Like, you got to believe that you want to do this for this child, and you're bonded with this child, not anything else. And if it's not that, don't do it.
Exactly.
Because it's not fair to the child.
No, it's not. So
if you're interested in learning more about step-parent adoptions or relative adoptions or any type of adoption, please give us a call here at the Breeden Law Office at 919-661-4970, or reach out to us at our website at www.breedenfirm.com. We're glad to come in and sit down and talk to you about what your options are or are not as it relates to an adoption. As we mentioned earlier, please like, follow, subscribe to this podcast wherever you see it, and also give us a 5-star review down below. It will help with our visibility so other people will be aware of the Best of Johnston County podcast. Until next time, I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden.
That's the end of today's episode of Best of Johnston County, a show brought to you by the trusted team at Breeden Law Office. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to sharing more interesting facets of this community next week. Every story, every viewpoint adds another thread to the rich tapestry of Johnston County. If the legal aspects highlighted raise some questions, help is just around the corner at www.breedenfirm.com.